a withdrawal, but involves what he described as a, quote, limited repositioning of troops, mostly from the Baghdad area to places that are likely to be safer. Trump administration officials will go to Capitol Hill this week to brief lawmakers on the U.S. strike that killed the top Iranian military general. NPR's Gloria Grisales reports congressional aides say the closed-door meeting on the Senate side is now set for Wednesday afternoon. Lawmakers will hear about the Friday drone strike that killed Iran's Major General Qasem Soleimani. Congressional aides said Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and other officials will conduct the closed-door meeting. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, CIA Director Gina Haspel, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, are also expected. House members are also slated to receive a briefing. The White House formally notified Congress of the U.S. strike this past weekend, but Democrats have voiced concerns that the notice raised more questions than answers. Iran has vowed revenge for the killing, while President Trump has said the U.S. will respond to any retaliation. Gloria Grisales, NPR News, Washington. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is urging congressional Democrats to wait for the intelligence before criticizing President Trump's decision to order the strike. Moments ago from the Senate floor, McConnell also addressed the partisan standoff over President Trump's impeachment. A publicly staunch Trump supporter, McConnell says the Senate should start the trial now and wait before deciding on witnesses. Harvey Weinstein's facing more sex crimes charges, this time in Los Angeles. They were announced just hours after Weinstein's criminal trial in New York City began. NPR's Rose Friedman reports on the mounting charges and potential punishment facing Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein went into court in New York City this morning facing criminal charges on only one coast. He is accused of 5 counts of criminal sexual activity related to 2 women, one who has remained anonymous, and another, Mimi Haley, who was a former production assistant at the Weinstein Company. But within hours, Weinstein faced yet another trial. Los Angeles County District Attorney Jackie Lacey announced today that Weinstein has been charged with raping one woman and sexually assaulting another in separate incidents over a 2-day period in 2013. The LA charges could come with a 28-year sentence if convicted. The maximum in the New York City case is life in prison. Rose Friedman, NPR News, New York.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Heller, WHYY News at 4:04. Just after embarking on his second term today, Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney signed 2 executive orders into law, as Jake Bloomgard of WHYY's Plan Philly reports.
The first executive order of Mayor Kenney's new term requires racial equity training for all city departments. But the order won't just call for a few mandatory meetings. Instead, it will require city departments to craft a racial equity plan, detailing how their hiring practices and departmental functioning can address long-standing racial disparities. The mayor's team said these goals will be baked into the future proposed budgets for each department. The second executive order will create an Office of Children and Families in the mayor's cabinet. This new position will oversee the Department of Human Services, along with the city's pre-kindergarten program and several other youth-oriented policies funded by money from the sweetened beverage tax. Jake Bloomgard, WHYY News.
2 more of Pennsylvania's members of Congress endorsed Joe Biden for president, bringing his total number of congressional endorsements in the Commonwealth to 6. The latest, Connor Lamb and Chrissy Houlihan, both of whom flipped their district from Democratic to Republican last year. They look to the moderates in their district and see Biden as a potential leader. Franklin Marshall College spokesman Kevin Duck.
Democratic engagements, and the advancement of international peace and security. More information is available from the member at Canadian Iowa and Americans for the Arts.
started it, we will end it. Those words were printed on signs carried through Tehran today as the casket of an Iranian general made its way to the streets. Hundreds of thousands of mourners came for the funeral of General Qasem Soleimani. People wept, they beat their chests. Soleimani was killed in a U.S. drone strike in Iraq last week. Iran is vowing hard revenge. President Trump is vowing destruction inside Iran if its forces target Americans. Now, our co-host Mary Louise, one of the few American journalists on the ground inside Iran today, she joins us now on the line from Tehran. Mary Louise, can you tell us a little bit more about what this was like? I mean, we're talking about people here openly weeping in the streets.
We are, and we're talking about endless, enormous, just wall-to-wall masses of people in the streets weeping. Not just men, but women, children. There were babies in strollers. The streets were just packed. All of the women that we saw, or most of the women, in the traditional head-to-toe black mourning garb. Many people carrying photos of Soleimani. Many people carrying banners, carrying flags. One flag that we saw all over was this bright crimson flag with the words "Hard Revenge" written down it. One woman had taken it and draped it over her black headscarf, so she moved down the street, this crimson flag with the revenge word is rippling behind her. And, you know, we don't know what form that revenge will take, what exactly Iran may choose to do to retaliate. We do know at the funeral today, Soleimani's daughter, Zainab, spoke. I want to let you hear just a little bit of how she sounded. So in her comments, she went on to address President Trump directly. She said, "Mr. Trump, you martyred my father, but that will bring Iran and Iraq closer together in friendship." She referenced the move by the Iraqi parliament over the weekend to call for the exit of the U.S. military and U.S. forces from Iraq, and she said that is the beginning. And then she directly threatened attacks on U.S. targets in the Middle East. So that was the type thing we were hearing, not just from people up presiding over the funeral, but ordinary Iranians who were moving around in the streets with us.
What was it like trying to talk to people given this atmosphere?
Yeah, it was interesting. We were being very careful because it was obviously an emotionally charged event, and we were Americans in this sea of people who at some moments throughout the proceedings had their fists in the air and were chanting "Death to America." That said, a lot of people were willing to stop. They wanted to tell us what was on their minds. They wanted Americans to know what Iranians think. There was one woman who will stick with me. Her name was Azam Ayubian. She told me she runs a travel agency. She said she doesn't usually come to marches, demonstrations, that's not her thing. But she said she is furious at President Trump. She told me he is, and I'm quoting, "a crazy man."
Amongst that our government give him a big and hard response.
You want the government of Iran to give Trump a big and hard response?
Yes, of course.
I don't know if you can hear it there. She was crying, Audie, just sobbing, and she told me she thinks that response should come in the form of a military attack.
You know, for his part, President Trump has said that the general was involved in terrorist activities, saying he was responsible for killing or wounding thousands of U.S. troops over the years. Trump has also claimed that Soleimani was hated and feared in Iran. Can you talk about what you actually encountered, though? Was everyone you talked to so angry at the United States?
Yeah, it's a good question. We did not hear a lot of mixed emotions, and perhaps that is predictable. We were at a funeral. Presumably people who have more moderate opinions about this found a way to stay home today. But some people had nuanced views. There was another man we spoke to who was 34 years old. This is an insurance agent. His name was Ali Ahmadi. He was there with this really sweet little 4-year-old daughter. They were holding hands, and he told me Iran is looking for peace. They don't want a war. But he's saying there, Audie, if it goes to a place where we have a war, then we will all stand up. I am young, he said, I can stand, I can go to war. He said, we are all Soleimanis now.
What happens next? What are you going to be watching for in the next few days in Iran?
So, Soleimani will be buried in his hometown tomorrow, which means all eyes again will be on Iran's next move. Again, we don't know what that will be. We have already seen Iran move to suspend the remaining limits under the 2015 nuclear deal. Now, this is not, I should be careful, this is not a total collapse of that deal, but it does mean they are moving farther and farther in that direction, and things don't look good for the future of that deal.
That's our co-host Mary Louise Kelly reporting from Tehran this week, one of just a few American journalists on the ground there. Mary Louise, thank you.
You are welcome, Marty.
Many lawmakers still have big questions about why the U.S. killed Qasem Soleimani and what the U.S. plans to do now. Congressman Eliot Engel chairs the House Foreign Relations Committee, and he joins us from his home district in New York. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
You were briefed Friday about the drone strike. Have you seen evidence that there was an imminent threat to the U.S. as the administration says?
Well, I haven't seen evidence. The administration insists that there was, but I see none of that. You know, Soleimani, I know he seems to be revered in Iran, but you know, had a lot of blood on his hands, and so I won't shed any tears for him. But what the administration did, what the president did, is absolutely unconstitutional and ridiculous. Later this week, the House is going to take up a war powers resolution, which would limit the president's actions against Iran.
I do want to ask you about that resolution in a moment,
Yeah.
but first, you say this is a man who has blood on his hands and that the president's decision to order the strike against him was unconstitutional. President Obama's last Homeland Security Secretary, Jay Johnson, who we speak with elsewhere in the program, argues that this was constitutional. I understand you disagree with the decision to order the strike, but to say that the strike was not allowed in the first place?
Well, I would say that the administration once again has ignored Congress's authority as a co-equal branch of government. We've had this problem from day one, and has failed to consult congressional leaders or provide notification of the strike. I would say that is not the way it should have happened.
Now that the strike has happened, I want to ask you about what this does to the geopolitical state of play. Yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said this.
We're definitely safer today. 100% certainty that America is safer today.
Then why?
Congressman, do you agree?
I don't know. I don't know. And I'm going to hear what the administration has to say. Congress is just, at least on the Democratic side of the aisle, we feel very, very strongly, and I feel very, very strongly, that little by little Congress's power as a co-equal branch of government has been eroded, and this is what you get when it's eroded. And I think this is a very dangerous situation. So,
in your view, is it a war? Would you say the U.S. is now at war with Iran? Is that a word you're comfortable using?
Well, I don't know if we're at war in terms of everyday war, but I certainly think that we have a if Congress does nothing, we will slip slowly back into that. We've been in endless war for 20 years. We were told all kinds of things by previous administrations. Turned out not to be true. I think there's not a lot of congressional support to plunge us back into another war.
So let me ask about this war powers resolution that the House plans to introduce and vote on this week. In the Senate today, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican, characterized Democratic criticism of the attack on Soleimani this way.
Must Democrats' distaste for this president dominate every thought they express and every decision they make?
Since the Republican-controlled Senate is not going to act on this bill once the House presumably passes it, is the House vote purely symbolic?
No, it's not symbolic, just symbolic. We have a responsibility. You know, Mitch McConnell has let everything die in the Senate. I mean, it isn't only impeachment stuff or now stuff with Iran. It's like every single thing that we've passed, from health care to you name it, it has gone to death in the Senate because it's not being acted upon. So I frankly don't think Senator McConnell is in a position to give anybody directions on how things should be done.
Let me also ask you about what happened in Iraq over the weekend, where the parliament voted to expel U.S. troops. More than 5,000 American service members are currently in the country, and they're being positioned in line with Iraqi wishes. What impact could a withdrawal have on
American interests in the region.
Well, and of course we're hearing that that the United States is going to withdraw. I mean, that's what we're hearing as well. So it just shows why the American people don't have the stomach to plunge into endless war. At which point it doesn't always wind up the way you think it will.
But I mean, are you concerned about, for example, the fight against ISIS and the resurgence of that group?
Of course, of course. I think that this strike will have negative repercussions in so many different ways, and that, of course, is one of them. But I again want to emphasize that Congress really needs to reestablish itself as a co-equal branch of government. You know, we had no war against Iran unless it's paid for, and we had put it in the NDAA and the
National Defense
Republican
Authorization
Senate.
Act, yeah.
Yes, and the Senate took it out. So we're going to do some more of that this week, and we're going to be very noisy in the House because we're very, very unhappy with what we regard as a foolish move.